Welcome back to Stage Dive. Here we are at season 3. It's been a magical slate of interviews for this season. We have an intimacy coordinator, we have a singer who's blowing up on TikTok, we have dancers, we have photographers, we have stand-up comedians, so many different kinds of performances, so many different kinds of humans. I loved making this season, and I hope you enjoy it. My guest today is Bearonce Bear. He is a drag queen and performer coming out of Florida, and I so enjoyed our conversation because we got to talk so much, not just about the art of performance, but what it means to be representative of a community when you are in the context of performing. He's lived such a long and illustrious life and has such a great perspective on how things have changed for him, for the trans community, for the drag queen community, for the LGBTQIA plus community. Just a wonderful, wonderful conversation. I'm so glad I got to spend time with him. I hope you enjoy. Okay, first question, very important. What is in your magical, very opaque green cup? What are you drinking this morning?
Water.
Sexy.
Just ice water. Listen, it is Satan's ass is sitting on the state of Florida right now. So as much hydration as we can get.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be fabulous if it was a good vodka, soda, splash of cran, splash of lime. That's my drink of choice. But I also figure I have to kind of sort of be a little professional today. So,
It's up to you. You decide
Right.
how professional you would like to be, and we'll make it work no matter which level you decide on. That's the beauty. You get to show up as you are.
Yeah.
As you are. So it is as of 3 days ago, because it's the 3rd. Yes. It is July, which means the quote unquote month of Pride has ended. How is your Pride this year? How is your June?
My June was busy. My June was slammed. So the beginning of June was the infamous gay days of Orlando, where everybody travels from all over the world and comes to Central Florida. I am actually the entertainment director for Bear Jamboree, which is part of One Magical Weekend, which happens the same weekend. And it was the kickoff. It was the first year for Bear Jamboree. So literally since February until June, it's been weekly meetings, figuring out schedules, finding dancers, finding entertainment. When's the best time to do this? When's the best time to do that? Da, 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 da. So then I came back from there. And 2 days later, I went up having an upper respiratory infection. Which, it was first a sinus infection that went to an upper respiratory infection. But I'm a badass bitch, and I just mustered through. I tested myself. It was not COVID, but I popped every medication known to man. And then, being a stylist, I have some, connections, and I called a client that's a doctor, and I was like, "Can you call me in a Z-Pack?" And they were like, "Sure, thank you." So awesome. Yeah. And then Lake County Pride, which is the county that I live in, was supposed to be June 17th. And the reason why I say supposed to be was Mother Nature decided to have a torrential downpour for about 4 hours. And basically what happened was, because so many people, and this is going to sound really shitty about what I'm going to say, but so many people in our community are very critical about organizations and not realizing what like there are legalities that happen. So we were like, it stopped raining. I don't understand why you're just still not doing it. Well, the fact that we're not doing it is because the electrical ports that we're plugging into are under 4 feet of water.
Yeah. Difficult to navigate that.
So, yeah, so it was supposed to be Lake County's first in-person Pride, because they were supposed to have the first one in 2020, when then we all know that world went on fire. And so then 21, obviously things still weren't happening. 2022, the city of Tavares had like a moratorium, or whatever you want to call it, a hold on all events until August. And then so Danielle, who owns Lake County Pride, she was able to get us in for June of 23, and it just broke her heart. I mean, 2 years now she's tried to, and I mean, we had an amazing entertainment. We had Tammy Brown here to headline, Darcel Stevens, Aquarius, Kirk T. Da Vinci, Naomi Onassis. I mean, we had legendary people in the drag community coming, and they were all understandable, which is so amazing because, you know, a lot of people are just like, oh, really? Well, they kind of can get shitty, but everyone was totally understanding because, I mean, it was like a monsoon. Like, I was like sitting in my house looking at Dan, that's my fiance, going, I don't think this is going to happen, but I'm not going to tell her that.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
You know, and then it went to just literally just working in the salon, making up for taking days off for Bear Jamboree and catching up on sleep. I know that sounds, it's not very prideful, but it's just, I had my pride in the beginning, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and one of the things that I feel bad for Lake County Pride not being able to have it is, for people that don't know Lake County, Florida, we're one of the reddest counties in Florida. So having this being the first in-person Pride, especially in this political climate, was huge. It was, I mean, it was huge. And it was like, shit, because I was ready for the protesters. So Dan, again, my fiance, he got me this portable PA system that you literally wear around, like, you have a strap on and it straps to your hip, and you've got like either a microphone or a lavalier thing. And I mean, it's loud, and I was ready, but I couldn't. It was taken away from me.
Yeah. Temporarily. It will
Temporarily.
Be
It will
be.
be.
The disappointment is palpable. I totally understand that.
How was your Pride in Colorado?
Oh, what a lovely question. It, like, June was a very good month. The Nuggets won the championship, so like the entire city has just been buzzing at this lovely sort of vibration for the last 2 or 3 weeks of just like happiness. It's now starting to settle down a little bit. But the weekend of Pride itself was amazing. The parade was lovely.
That's awesome.
And it also coincided, I don't know if this is true in Florida, like we have had an incredibly rainy and just wet sort of couple of months here in Colorado, and we're a desert, so that's fairly odd. And then all of a sudden the weather kind of broke, and it's been kind of like 80s and bright sunshine a lot. And so it just felt like there was lovely energy in the city for the whole month.
That's awesome. But it's Colorado also like that state that you can like jet ski in the same day. Like you could snow ski and jet ski in the same day. Like you could go up to the mountains, or you can come on down, like in May or in March, kind of thing. Like that's, somebody told me that lived there. They were like, yeah, they're like, we had like all 4 seasons in one day. And I was like,
yeah. Well, like, so let me correct what I just said. June had a lot of wonderful weather, and I think it was maybe like 10 days ago, there was baseball-sized hail that like destroyed cars and hurt a lot of people at an outdoor concert, and like was also awful. It just happens so frequently, like these weather oddities that you almost don't notice. Like in April, we were having lovely weather, and then we had like 18 inches of snow out of nowhere. Like literally it went from like a lovely day outside in a t-shirt the next morning, like had to fucking shovel the sidewalk.
So that sounds like the time that we went out there. When we flew out there in October of 19, we were like, let's go see the foliage and the leaves change, like, you know, 2 homosexual gay bears. Let's go frolic through the woods. Let's get our beef stew. You know what I mean? Exactly. Yeah. Very on brand.
Well played, sir. Well played.
And the week before, we get this like weather announcement that it's going to be 19 degrees and 12 inches of snow. And I was like, what? And so I'm like on ASOS, like 2-day ordering. I got this fabulous like fur jacket for like, it was faux fur, obviously, for like $50 marked down from $200. And I was on the plane, and when we landed, I like pull it out of my duffel bag, and it was so funny because I even had like I forget what they call them, but like those like fur Russian hats.
Yeah.
I had one of those, looking like I'm like going to Vail, you know. And Dan was watching as I was putting it on while I was on the plane, and like this guy had a camera out, just like videoing me, just following me off the plane. And I was just like, have they never seen a big man in a fur jacket? What is this? What's happening?
Oh my God, just
so yeah,
party.
Okay.
So like, I have a deeper curiosity to my original question, which is like, what
Sure.
does when in the month of June during Pride, like, do you feel like you have time and space to be reflective about like what it means for that month to exist? Again, to be a member of the community during that month when it's like, um, on the one hand, I can see how like it is so nice to be celebrated and acknowledged. On the other hand, you run into the inevitable question of like, well, why is it 1 month?
Right.
Like, why do we
Right.
only
Right.
celebrate this for 1/12 of the calendar year? So I'm like, and I know that you've been very, very active in the community, creating events, welcoming people, supporting people. So it's a massive part of your life. I'm just curious, like for you as an individual, as a human, kind of like
Hmm.
what feelings come up throughout the month?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question because if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have a different answer than I do today.
I would love to hear both, kind of where it was and how it has evolved.
So 5 years ago, it was about partying. It was about being
Mm,
out there and just being like, yes, queen, let's do the thing. You know what I mean? And this year, it was more about activism. It was more about
mm,
being, and I hate the word, I hate the word of being seen. You know what I mean? But being present. It's about
mm,
being there because if you're just being seen, it's basically you're just putting on the show.
right.
But if you're being present in the moment of the good and the bad, and I feel for me that that's every day of my life, and June is just the month that when Marsha threw that brick, she had to do it in June, the hottest month of the year. You know what I mean? I'm like, couldn't you have done this in September, October, November? But no, but for me, for June, although I love being busy, at the same time I hate it because I'm not able to go out there and be fully presently seen
Mm,
and amongst everybody. I'm still amongst my peers, but it's like I'm more along on the backside of being amongst my peers. For me, Pride is, now that I'm 44 years old, is me going on YouTube and looking up St. Pete Pride, New York Pride, and watching it and just being like, thank you. Like, look at where we've come. And to every
mm,
single one of them, thank you. Like, that just brings joy to me.
yeah.
And so it's like the whole month of June, I literally will just go and be like, okay, whose pride is where? And I'll look it up just to watch, what's being said and what the parades look like and what the pride setup is like. And, um, again, 5 years ago, totally different story. I have just been like, one of the ones that are like two sheets to the wind, but still living my best life, partying. Now it's moved. It's switched those roles. Of
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, y'all go do you youngins, you go do it all. I am proud of you. You know what I mean? Like, and I hate to say that because I'm not saying like 44 is like dust and I'm gonna die tomorrow, but I tire easily.
Yes. Yes. And you need to hydrate more than you used to, I would be willing to guess.
Exactly. I mean, this skin doesn't look like this for no reason.
This shit requires effort.
It
Um,
does.
yeah, I like it sounds like it's really tracking sort of an internal change within you.
Yeah.
I was just like both kind of where you are in life and then also your interest and excitement in consuming like where it's happening around the world and how other people are celebrating it and seeing how big it is.
Hmm.
Um, that all yeah, that all makes very good sense. Um, and then huh, my brain is like, you may sound dumb when you ask this question. It's like, well, we'll find out after I ask this question. We'll see where it goes.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if this is true or if this is just a product of the nature of the conversation I've been having more recently. It feels to me like within the larger queer community, there is an introduction of more introspection. And what I mean by that is when you said, like, I hate to say this, but there can be a lot of negativity in this community.
Hmm.
And I was speaking with a trans person the other day, and he was saying, when I transitioned, I got so much negative feedback about how I had to present myself in a kind of masculine form. in order to make this work or to kind of do it the way it's supposed to be done. And so again, minimal, like a couple of little data points, but I'm just curious from your experience, like, do you feel like within the queer community there is what am I trying to ask?
There's
Do you
still
feel like
segregation.
Well, I like I want, what I'm trying to do with the question is like, are people trying to hold each other to a standard of like, hey, like we also have to be loving to each other? Like, it's not just enough to be like, hey, we're gay and that's enough. It's like, no. Like, we also have to do our own like analysis of bullshit and figure out how to be more inclusive and more understanding. And we can't just be like, oh, because we're all under the rainbow, everything is fine. And I'm just curious, like, if that parallels your experience, or like, again, I might have just gotten a couple of little data points that have nothing to do with each other.
Wow, so you're asking me a question, and I'm going to be full honest. And this may or may not get me canceled, or may get me the applause, or it may get me this bitch. You know what I mean? Because I have a lot of opinions on this. Like, I honestly do. I have a lot of opinions with it, and thoughts. I mean, because opinions are like assholes. Everybody does have one. It's the old saying. But it's also, for me, I also look at it in the sense of, I remember when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, what I went through as a identifying gay man to just exist. You know what I mean? And today, what I'm seeing within our community is, yes, there is this intersect of, we all have to take care of one another. We all have to love one another. We have to support and stand for each other. We have to make sure that even if you don't like that person, that if they talk something negatively about their sexuality, their identification, that we still have to protect them. I do agree with that to a point. Where am I going with this? Because my ADHD just kicked in. Come on, Adderall, do your thing. Do your thing, Adderall. I took you an hour ago. You should have done your thing by now. Oh, that's right. But I also feel that our community has gotten soft, in the sense of, I hate to sound like the old white man, but this younger generation has no clue what people of my age and previous went through. Zero. So that today could be where we are. You know, and there's a lot of pushback within our government, because they are not blind, and they see that our community, even though we're like, yay, kumbaya, we're under the rainbow, we are so divided, because it's you know, and literally the blacks are with the blacks, the Latins with the Latins, the whites are with the whites, the Asians are with the Asians, the trans are with the trans, the non-binary with the non-binary, the bears are with the bears, you know, the chubs with the chubs, the twinks are with the twinks, the jocks are with the jocks. And then when you start blending those all together, it's almost like somebody has to go and throw the little pot in there, or the little stick in there, to start stirring, because somebody wants to keep us separated. And I'm talking about within our own community. Like, they're like, no, we should still have the representation of who we are, of how our identification is, what our gender is, what our race is, you know, and so forth. And I hate to use this, I'm like, can't we just all get along? Like, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, honestly. And for me, like, it's so funny, because I'm a bear. I am within the bear community. I work mostly bear events, but I prefer to be around trans women and lesbians than anybody else. I really do. I have more fun with them than anything, you know, just because within the bear community, I would say up until 2020, it was very toxic masculinity. It was very like, you have to, oh, and can we curse? Like, how
oh my God,
go
no
for
language
it
filters at all.
Okay,
It's
cool.
all
Okay.
welcome.
Okay. Like, you know, it was just like, oh, you got to sit there, you got to, you know, present this way, and bow your chest, and you got to stand, and you got to be muscular and masculine, and even if you're not, you got to have that deep voice. But then it's that same bitch that's in the back room saying, "Yeah, fuck my pussy." You know what I mean? Like in a high school voice. Like, and I legit say that. Like, I mean, I've been to events where I'm just like, wow, that's definitely a dom top, and then I'm like, oh no, you're not. Like walking through the dark room, or being like, okay, Prada, Gucci, Versace, all of the rest of them. Get it, ma'am. You know what I mean? And I feel like what's happened today is, and I love that, and I'm going to speak for this on like the male side, the ones that identify as male, that the trans men that have not had bottom surgery and that are with a masculine, and I use that air quotes, bear man, and they're having intercourse. Like, I think that's fantastic for them. Like, that they have that ability to, back in the day, it was there was the penis and the vagina, and that went with boy and girl. You know what I mean? And now that our community is about breaking the constructs that have been given to us our entire lives, which is upheaving the entire fucking world, which is a good change. But I feel that there's also a sense that there still has to be an identification of something, that you have to be able to identify as something, some way, because what I have basically done is, if I see you and you look like me, I'm going to call you he. If I see you and you look like Jennifer Lopez, I'm going to call you she. If I see you and you look like Matthew Anderson, I'm going to call you they. But if I get that wrong, you can't attack me, because I'm just going off of how I'm learning to be like, okay, what pronoun should I go where? And I think that within our community of everybody needing to be under this rainbow, and we're supposed to love one another and support one another, we're so quick to react and jump and argue versus educating. Does that answer your question? I know I kind of like went a lot of places.
No, it does. I mean, I think at the risk of oversimplifying, and you're welcome to push back if you don't feel like I get it, but we're all learning, right? It's right. Like, just being within the community does not mean that you are impervious to either making mistakes or having an emotional reaction to someone who misgenders you or whatever it might be. And at the end of the day, like, I think all of us are just looking for more grace. Like, we're just looking for a space in which we can exist safely and connect through kindness and community. And like, there isn't a right answer. There is no like, oh, clearly we should just do X. And I think it's one of those interesting things of like, it's not hard to see the problem. Creating a solution, particularly one that's at all expedient or immediate, is fucking impossible, because we're talking about, as you framed, like, these massive changes about how people are perceived and identified and communicated to and with. And like, I think one of the most fascinating things about pronouns particularly is like, it's how you would describe someone in the third person. And so if I'm talking to you, their pronouns are not necessarily relevant to the conversation unless I'm describing you in a different context, or I'm talking about you to someone else. And like, I think that's a fascinating place for the language to get so specific and to be so important. Again, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It's just, I just find it interesting, because again, like, I love to exist in the you and I space of like, I am human, you are human. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna work harder.
See is taking the lead in a nationwide effort to restrict drag shows. A bill restricting those shows on public property.
Just weeks after signing the Parental Rights and Education Bill into law, it's also called the Don't Say Gay Bill. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is targeting drag shows.
Now to a battle over a controversial bill targeting drag shows. A Florida lawmaker sponsoring the legislation says it's all about protecting children.
The transgender community in the United States is reeling as Republican lawmakers and prominent conservative figures try to curtail their rights. A record number of bills relating to health care, access to bathrooms, even drag performances have already been
Exactly. Well, and I think also kind of jumping off of what you're talking about also is that we as a community also have to realize that there are many things that before any of us were born, before whatever that we're saying, well, not Yas Queen is kind of recent, but like entertainers in the back room have been calling each other girl forever. Like, hey girl, hey girl, hey girl. And I'm going to tell you a story, but I'll simplify it. So I went to a friend's house. They had a roommate that lived with them. I walked in and was like, hey girl, sat down on the couch. The next thing I know, my name was not written, but I was being dragged on their social media. It is so sad that in this day and age, I, as a trans man, that somebody's going to walk into my home and say, hey girl, okay. And I'm reading, like literally, I'm sitting on the couch and reading this, and I look over at my friend and I was like, do you know what this picture said? And he was like, what? And I was like, go read. And I was like, I only know them from drag. So we have a trans man that does female drag. So drag is like, hey girl, hey, I call my fiance girl. I'm like, hey girl, what's up? You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. And so I literally a year later, I bumped into them and I went up to them and I apologized. And they were like, what are you apologizing for? And I was like, I'm apologizing because I insulted you. And I did not realize that I insulted you. And I apologize for that. And that will never happen again. And he looked at me, he was like, I'm just really sorry to you. He's like, I was just having a bad day that day. He's like, and you were just the first person for me to go off on. And I was like, well, and I accept that. And I hope that you accept my apology as well, because that was not meant to do like with intent. So I think where you were saying human to human, we also need to like grace, like you said, that we need to be given a little bit of grace because we are all still learning. I hate to say the new way, but it really is like it's doing this wave through, you know what I mean? Yes, non-binary, trans, the entire alphabet of our community have always existed, but it's almost like everybody's just now being seen and being present. You know, so they have to realize that we all are still learning. You know, now if I see somebody that's talking about somebody specifically, let's just say, you know, a trans woman, and they are talking to me and they are continuously saying he, I will correct them in a hot minute. Like, right. You know, and especially, have you seen that? Have you seen the new show Glamorous on Netflix?
No, not yet.
You need to watch it. It's amazing.
Okay.
There's a character on there who presents very feminine, but in the entire show they keep saying he, and then there's a whole thing that happens. And I could, like, seeing that character, I was just like, I would immediately say they, because it was masculine and feminine. You know what I mean? There was this blend of these two. I could see the blend. And I think that just people need to realize that, like, you can't show up, and I hate to say this because it sounds like I'm like supporting the construct that is within our community, but you can't show up in a suit and tie with a buzzed head and expect me to call you she, just because we are all still learning where to break that mold. You know, now if you're in a tux, a tie, a shaved head, you got a pair of pumps on, bitch, I'm going to call you she in a heartbeat, because I'm like, yes, ma'am, giving it all, everything. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think there is definitely grace that needs to be given to each other within our community, because if not, the outside that is not wanting any of us to succeed is going to continue thriving on that. And they are going to take examples of, I'm going to say, the hot mess, little subsection, you know, and that's where they're going to just zone in with that laser beam and be like, see, this is what these people do, and they aren't, you know what I mean? And it's like, they're just seeing one little piece of the puzzle when there's all this other here. So we need to make sure that all this other here is more embracing and more accepting of each other and giving each other grace without attack. Yeah. Because when you attack somebody, you immediately shut somebody down mentally and emotionally.
Yes.
So
it's very, very true. Where in your journey did drag and drag performance sort of make its first appearance? How did that come to pass?
Like me getting into drag, or the first time I ever saw drag?
Let's do both.
Okay. So first time I ever really saw a drag entertainer was in Orlando at a club called Wilds. I was 17. I snuck in because I always looked older. I even got a drink. The bar's not open anymore, so I even got a cocktail served. Just scandalous, you know. But I saw Catherine Nevitz and Danielle Hunter, who are legendary, iconic, you know, drag entertainers. And I was just like, I remember sitting there just watching it like this, you know, and because I was like, the transformation, oh my God, wow. You know, and it always fascinated me. So I was a childhood model. Yes, I was. Cool. And then my mother snatched me out of the scene as I was just on that uphill, because she said my education was being affected. And I'm like, I could have been a coke addicted whore right now. How dare you steal me from that, you know? But so that, and then I was also in pageantry when I was a kid, boy pageants, obviously. And I always took acting classes. And so just seeing, and music has always been my passion. So seeing that, it was like everything just kind of like pulled together. And I was just like, oh my God, this is magic. It was better than Disney. And which led to, you know, all these years later in 2011, a friend of mine, now ex-husband, needed a backup dancer. And because I don't dance, I'm a prop queen. I'm a prop queen, humor queen, or I emote. But if you're looking for a death drop split, not me. She goes down, you call 911 to get a defibrillator. But they were looking for a backup dancer, and I was to be Joan Rivers, and like, you know, looking like them, and or a homage to Jonah. I didn't do like a whole Joan thing, but I like just to be in the outfit and hair and lip sync to a part of the song that they edited in, but I had to shave, and I was like, ugh. So I shaved. And I was like, well, listen, if I'm shaving, I'm performing my first number too, single. Like, I'm not going to just be a backup dancer. And they were like, oh, let me see. And the club said, yeah, of course. So in my 3.5-minute song, I made $84. And that is where the bug bit. That is where the bug and the lashes and the lipstick and the heels and the corset and the uncomfortability and the sweating and the expense, the money pit happened. That's where it all began.
Got it.
And so they hired me back 2 more times, and I shaved and I shaved. And I remember looking in the mirror and being like, I can't do this. I was like, this is my baby. Like, this is my beard. This is my identification, you know? And so I went and I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to go bearded. And this was in 2011, before Florida bearded drag was a big thing. You know, and there was a entertainer here visiting my friend's ex-husband by the name of Pollo Delamar out of, I think they're in San Francisco. So Pollo came over and like saw my look, and my makeup skills were not what they were today. And she just looked at me and she was like, honey, she's like, I'm living for this entire look. She's like, San Francisco would eat you up and live for you. Because it was like, I mean, I had the big hair, the tight gown, you know, and then a beard. And very soft face, but still beard. Mm. And I remember I walked in the club and everybody was like, oh, what the fuck? What is this bitch doing? And I was like, this is me, you know? And I was like, fuck it, if they can't take a joke, you know? And for me, it was just, you know, that was where it was a hobby. I was doing it, you know, my thought process was every once in a while, like Halloween drag, you know what I mean? And that is where it all kicked off. So then I started working at a place in Dade City called Sawmill Campground. I was on cast there for 4 years, and bearded. And then, I mean, I've been flown out to Las Vegas to work at Piranha Nightclub. I've been all over the Southeast. I would love to see other parts of the country as well. I mean, I've seen it travels for work, but, you know, entertaining as well. And for me, that's where it all has brought me to where I am today, you know, and I feel that where it first started was about me just having fun. And as it's progressed, I remember all the pushback that I got for being bearded. And my thought process always was, and I live by this quote, why should I conform to their comfort if they're not willing to conform to mine? I think I made that. I've never read it anywhere. I don't know if it is somewhere, but I always give myself the credit that I did. Because I remember back at 17 years old, seeing these entertainers and being like, oh my God, that's amazing. I want to be able to do that. Well, now I can be that 17-year-old that's not supposed to be at the bar looking at me being like, oh my God, I can do that. And I don't have to shave. You know, so I feel like before it was a hobby, but now it's more of activism. Before it was about the fun, because I mean, drag is fun. It really is, but it's exhausting. It's a lot of work. People don't know what we go through. Very expensive, very expensive. You know, and I feel for the drag entertainers that do this for a living. Like, and I'm talking about the bars. I'm not talking about the Rue Girls. I'm talking about the ones, our local queens, our club entertainers that do this for a living. I'm like, how do you do this? 4 days a week, 5 days a week. You know, I'm like, how do you do your body has got to be killing you, you know? And I just sit there and I'm like, That's why I'm not the one that just goes up with $1. I go up with 5, and per song, I'm like, here you go, because I know what you're going through. I know what you did to get yourself, because I've seen you out dragging. Your waistline is not anywhere near that. You know what I mean? I know what size shoe you're in, and those heels do not come in that size. So I know you've got your toes squished in there right now. You know, like, and so I'm just like, here's 5%. I mean, if they really got me, I'm like, here's a 20. You know what I mean? Like, I will be quick to throw them money, because the one thing, and I understand that, these celebrity entertainers that come into our bars and stuff like that, I get they're celebrities. But we gave them that. They're celebrities because of us.
Right.
Because of our entire community. We support their platform. And I'm not saying they're all like this whatsoever, but I feel like they're coming in there, they're doing their job with their this is their career, and they're leaving and they're on to the next. They're not going to remember that you stood there for 20 minutes watching them do all their sets, just 17-year-old being like, and you only had that $1 to give them because you are working a part-time job. They're not going to remember that, but your local entertainer sure as hell will. So that's kind of where my drag journey started, from 17-year-old Anthony to 44-year-old Anthony. That's beautiful. That's my journey.
I'm curious, and again, like, this is one of those questions I'm feeling my way through how to ask it as I ask it, so we'll see where we land. Like, you had mentioned earlier, like, within the bear community, there's this profound emphasis on masculinity, mm-hmm. and the broad chest and the deep voice, and then in drag, you're leaning deeply, deeply into your feminine. And so I'm curious, like, does the feminine feel like a total act? Does it feel like it's a part of you don't normally get to express? Like, I guess it's 2 questions. One is, what is your relationship to masculine and feminine energy? And then how is that represented in sort of you when you are in drag on stage?
So that's a really interesting question. So back in the day, 2 different people. Today, you get the same bitch. As Bearonce, I'm a little bit more demanding. I'm a little bit more like, I'm like head mom in charge. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, no, we're going to do it like this. Sit down. You know what I mean? But for me, I would always say that I've always had the blend of being masculine and feminine. I feel like I don't present myself as this like super deep throat, bow. I ain't got time for that. My back hurts. I don't want to do that. And for me, it's I've always been like that. But I remember when I first started drag, when I would get out of drag, I would purposely like embrace the masculinity a little bit more, just because for me that was more of a protection, because I didn't want people to associate with me with like this like weak feminine person. I think in today's world, I see a lot of entertainers that get out of drag, and they also all of a sudden become very reclusive. It's like they draw in, and I'm like, whoa, why are you doing that? Just be you, And I think it's because so many people think that drag is just about femininity, or if you are a king, about masculinity, that they are forgetting that drag is just an expression, and drag, and I hate to say it, drag is art, it really is, but it's an expression. You're taking your feelings, and if you watch a drag entertainer that, I feel is kind of like there to actually entertain and not just collect the dollar. And if you watch their movement and listen to their music, their song choice for that day and their outfit, you will exactly learn what they're going through. That's just my opinion. Does that answer your question?
It does. It's I like I think it's really interesting that there was a part of you, at least at first, that was resistant to some of that softer, more feminine edge, and that you wanted to retain as a male identifying person, I get it. Like the masculine energy feels safer because it's like I can fight. Like if I'm in a masculine energy, like I can defend myself, and I don't associate my feminine energy with that same ability to protect myself. I'm not saying that's true. I'm not saying women can't defend themselves, just to be very, very clear. I'm just saying within my body, if I had to defend myself, I'm leaning masculine, 100%. So some of you might know I rap, I make music. That's what I do sort of primarily in addition to this podcast. And for a very long time, I had considered doing an album. I had thought about it, but I had never pulled the trigger. And that has finally changed. My debut album, Integration, is coming out November 2nd of this year, 2023. I'm immensely proud of the project. We have so much fun content with behind the scenes and music videos and visualizers and all kinds of cool shit. So from now until the album releases, you'll see more and more of that stuff coming up on Instagram and TikTok and all of the places. But most importantly, I want you to be there for when the album comes out. So if you're interested, if you're willing, I would love for you to pre-save it, or if you want, you can reach out to me and I can even share some clips of the album with you. I'm, again, so proud of it, and I can't wait to share it with you.
Well, it's because I think that comes to where it's like, you know, if you look at masculinity, it's almost like the movie Steel Magnolias. You know what I mean? Like men are supposed to be the strongest, but really the women are, in the sense of men that I identify as male or have masculine energy. Usually, they are actually the most emotional, weakest people, because they have their protection, like you said. But if you go over to the female or identify as female or feminine, that their vulnerability is actually allowing them to be stronger, because you can tap into that emotional side. And there is nothing more destructive than being able to get into somebody's psyche. And I feel that a person that is feminine or identifies as female is able to get into somebody's head quicker than a masculine person, because they're going to lead with emotion. Because I will say that is one thing, when I've been in arguments, depending on who I'm going up against and what the subject is. I mean, trust me, I have been in my amount of physical fights. I'm not like, yay, but you know, I've had to protect myself. But my tongue is sharp. And I have had a lot of people say, bitch, you go for the jugular. And I'm like, I go for their jugular so that they remember, don't fuck with me. Because I can punch you, that bruise is going to go away. But if I get in here, you're going to constantly remember what I say when you see me. That's just my thought.
No, it's like...
Come on, therapy.
No, it's another lens, right? It's like if you identify in a way that other people feel threatened by, feel violent toward, like you don't have an obligation, but there is a need or an imperative to be able to defend yourself. And so then the question becomes, how do you choose to do that? How do you choose to create protection for yourself? And like, I've never heard someone sort of break down the different ways you might approach it. And again, it's not intended to celebrate violence. It's to acknowledge, like, if you have to defend yourself, it would be silly or foolish to not have some ability to do that, or to not at least be thoughtful about how can I protect myself if I need to.
Well, and kind of off of what you just said, that's why actually for Lake County Pride this year, I was supposed to be part of the entertainment, but I was also the entertainment director. And then when all the shit went down with this state, and once Dickface up in Tallahassee signed that bill, I went directly to Danielle and I was like, change of plans. And she was like, well, Anthony, this is what they're wanting. I was like, no. Listen to what I have to say. I'm not gonna perform. I will still host, but I will host as Anthony, because I want to make sure that I can get these entertainers from the hotel to the stage safely. Because if somebody approaches me, if I'm in nails, wig, tits, hips, heels, gown, binding, I can go off on my tongue in a heartbeat. But if this person gets physical, that's harder for me to because they're going to see Bearonce feminine. They're going to think I'm, that sissy little faggot, and they're going to be able to go and they're going to want to approach me. But if you see this walking down, 330-pound man walking down the street, and I'm wearing like a cutoff shirt, some cutoff shorts, some like chic kicker boots, do you really think you might say something, but I don't think you're going to approach me as quick?
Yeah.
So I think that also comes with the construct that we like, going back to where we kind of started, where the construct that we have all lived under for so many years. We need to educate rather than immediately attack when somebody accidentally, and that starts within our own community first. Accidentally misgenders or insults, whatever. We're so quick to jump, but how about we educate so then we can break where if you want to be walking down the street in some cute little hot shorts and a little crop top, and you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't because this is not the best part of town. But if we break the constructs and we educate, you can go do that in the not so great part of town.
Right.
Because everybody's going to be doing it.
Right.
It's just like pants are supposed to be men, women are supposed to be in dresses, but why? You know what I mean? Because that is called being able to keep people in their place. And how come even cisgender, straight male and female, they have their issues too, because you see a woman in an office in a pantsuit and you immediately think she's going to be Miranda Priestley, but you see her walking through in a dress, you think she's going to be Emily.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most interesting things about sort of this whole, I appreciate we're in like wave 7 or 8 of this sort of consistent revolution thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the biggest pieces is the sort of dissolving of barriers. It is no longer gay, bi, straight. It is like literally there's a full spectrum, and you can fall between 0 and 100, and like all of the places are beautiful, and they are going to be reflected and represented by the individual based on their own personal life experience. And like it is at once harder to just know intuitively, oh, that is a blank, or
right.
that person is representing blank.
Right.
Which again, I think is at once amazing because it creates more room for freedom of expression. And I think if you're expressing exactly who you are without resistance or fear, that's when people are happiest. And like, if you wanted to be gross about it, like also like more productive, better in relationships, like being happy with yourself solves a lot of the really awful shit we see in the, like alcoholism would probably go down if more people were felt self-expressing themselves, right? Like a whole bunch of things would get better. But so actually this brings up another question. So you live in a red spot in a state that has a pretty interesting relationship to, let's call it, tolerance. That is not to say all of Florida. My mom and my mom's family are from Pensacola. And so I've spent a lot of time down there, and it's this really interesting mixture of like a lot of kindness and also a lot of judgment. That is, again, N of 1, my experience of sort of the South. But I'm curious, like, it would be easy to paint why it is not awesome to be a gay person in an incredibly red area. But I'm curious, like, are there advantages? Are there things you enjoy about being a constant reminder that the queer community exists and is present? Like, tell me about that.
Oh, 100%. I just wanted to, and I just want to rewind really quick because there was something that you had said, and I don't remember the exact wording that what you were saying. But just going back before we move on to this next subject, I think what we also have to realize too within our own community is that, you were talking about boundaries. And
Yes.
that as those boundaries are broken down, we also have to realize that there are people that have preferences and there are people that are attracted to, you know, a certain thing. And so we also have to stop attacking each other because maybe, you know, yes, let's just say that there's this beautiful trans bear, you know, that is absolutely gorgeous. And if I was single and they told me that they were trans, you know, I would be totally 100% supportive. But on the sexual side, for me, I don't know if I could go there because I don't get real graphic. I like balls. I like them on my face. I like them slapping on my. I like them, like, you know what I mean. I like balls. That's my kink. That's my fetish. That's my get off. You know what I mean? Like, I like that. So it's like, I think we also have to go back to that whole grace and I'm not saying that I don't think you're gorgeous. It's just
It's a preference.
It's a preference. So that's one thing we also have to realize too. But okay, so scrolling back over to the question that you just asked me.
Yes.
I totally love. So the funny thing is even though we are in extremely, Lake County is the red dot, a very strong red dot of Florida, there are actually a lot of LGBTQI plus people here. They're older. And now I'm seeing a lot more younger happening, like coming out and being present. And so I feel like I, being here for the past 23 years, the growth that I've seen for our community. There used to be a gay bar here called Attitudes. It was Cheers, where everybody knew your name, you know. They had some drag shows. They never really had any issues. But it's, you know, we were in the behind the doors. You know, I've always been out and loud and proud. Always. And I'm a hairdresser of 23 years in this area. All of my clients know that I'm a gay man. They know basically my entire life. And just like I know theirs. But in 2020, when COVID happened, when I say that, I know some people demonetize or whatever, take that out. But so, you know what happened in 2020. Okay.
Yeah.
So when all that happened, that was actually supposed to be my bow out year from drag. That was where I was like, okay, I can, goodbye everybody. So long. It's been a great journey. And now I can just go be Gay Bear Anthony. You know what I mean? And then I was approached by a local business that was a 2-story paddle boat that had dropped in the water in August of 2020, and they were struggling because of what was going on. And they were wanting to do a drag bingo. And I was like, well, I'm not really a bingo person. Let's do brunch. So we did a drag brunch on there. And we had 67 people. It was full open air. So we could, you know, we have 67 people a month with a waiting list, because 67 people was all we could fit on there, with a waiting list every single month on that boat for a 2.5-hour around the entire lake. And what that did was that kind of created this, oh, they're here, because I was now bringing in other entertainers from all over the Central Florida area. And some of them were trans, some of them were queer, some of them were identifying as gay, you know, and they were bringing their entourage. And so there was this influx of the rainbow happening. And then with all the advertisements, because, you know, how do you advertise? You share on social media, you share all of like the word of mouth and all of the amount of stuff that I would get said. And I would just sit there And I'd be like, I'm so glad that I'm a strong person because this would really get to me if I wasn't. I mean, I've been told I'm going to hell, all that stuff. So then in 21, I flipped over due to a personal experience with the previous company that we were at, personal issues. I went to the restaurant called the Doghouse, the Tavares Doghouse, which is right across the marina from where the boat that we were on. Literally, like their back window, it's you walk across a volleyball court, you're on the dock to go to the rip. Yep. And now it's because of petty. Because first it was just like, yay, we can get out of the house, we can make a little money, I can employ some people that need to make money, great, okay, I guess I'll get back in track, but we were all stuck in the house. So I was like, yes, we get out. There's a reason.
Totally.
And then in February of 22, it became petty in the sense of company number one thought that they were going to be the end all be all. And I was like, no, honey, let me show you how this is done. Well, our first seating had 137 people. I think it was 137 or 147 people because there's an indoor and outdoor. And so I started advertising, of course, for there. Of course, the hatred that came in. Hatred. Well, February of this year was our 1-year anniversary there. And the amount of support that we keep getting, even though everything that's going on, we've actually gotten more support. Granted, the amount of backlash, like the restaurant has literally gotten death threats. Like the owner is messaged like death threats, the employees. And she's an amazing woman. She's very like, I opened this bar. She opened March of 21, mid everything. Yeah.
Brave. Holy smokes.
Yeah. She's like, I opened this with the intent as a community establishment, meaning if you live in this community, you have a place to come, no matter who, what, how. And so she's like, you're my biggest selling thing. What, And so, I mean, she has a huge support for the I'm just going to say gay community instead of all the letters. Just the gay community, just to cover it all for the gay community. She has huge support, huge ally to us. And now it's like I had said earlier, now it's about the activism part where I'm just like, I am the gay man. Come, say that to my face. Not that I want to be confrontational, but if you got the balls, come on. Stop hiding behind your computer. Stop. You know what I mean? And I'm like, because I would rather educate you than you sit there and be ignorant. It happened. There was a guest in the audience with their wife. And at the end of the show, he went up to Tammy, the owner, and said, I've got to thank you. And she's like, for what? And he's like, everything I've been hearing, nothing of that I saw. He's like, I had a great time. He's like, this is my first try. And then we're talking about good old country, white country boy. You know what I mean? He's like, I had a great time. He's like, people were laughing. People were dancing. He's like, the entertainment was phenomenal. He's like, I was really skeptical. I didn't want wieners in my face and seeing sex. And because that's what I've been hearing, what's happening.
Oh.
And he's like, nothing happened. He's like, I don't understand where these people are getting all this information. She's like, well, if you could do me a favor, if you could maybe go tell people that story. And he's like, I sure will. And so, yes, I feel like it's almost like now empowerment that I'm like here, it's so many people, especially what's going on, are like, why are you staying in Florida? Well, one, I have 23 years of clients. That's really hard as a hairdresser to rebuild.
That's a tough book to build in a new place.
Exactly. And yes, I might be the sticks, but actually people from Orlando are starting to invade here because Orlando has gotten too expensive, too busy. And I mean, stuff is just building up left and right here. Like we're going to be the next, you don't know the area, but we're going to be the next Claremont, Florida, which has grown tremendously. But I'm like, if I leave, that leaves one less person to make that difference, to make that change, to hit that one person. not, and I don't mean hit, but like to get in, to let them to educate, totally. And so, it's fun being here, but it's exhausting as well.
Oh my God, for sure.
So.
It's this really beautiful duality because you're getting two things. One is, again, like, I feel like I've said this quote a ton in the last 2 weeks, but it's from Brene Brown, which is, it's really hard to hate people up close. And I think so much of the rhetoric coming from certain government institutions and individuals is about making sure that people never see it, because if they never see it, then they can build a story and a narrative about what it is and how evil it is and how depraved it is. And the reality is, if you saw a show, it would be impossible to continue believing in that lie. Right. And so, like, I so appreciate that part. And then going back to an earlier part of the conversation, it's also, it's representation. It's creating the experience for the 17-year-old to be like, oh, that's an option. Like, that's I feel like certainly every time I've spoken to someone from the queer community, but more broadly, every time I've talked to a performer, there's a moment where they see someone doing something exactly the way that they want to do it. Right. And it's like, it's the proof that you need from the universe of like, oh, my dream can be real. Like, this isn't just some fucking bananagrams thing I have in my head. Like, I can actually go and live this thing that I so desperately want. And like, man, that fuel can sustain a fire for a very long time.
For a very, very long time. Very, very long time. Yeah. And I think it just comes, I think everything literally comes back down to education. Like, and I don't mean like school. I mean, just like,
yes,
seeing the 17-year-old sitting in the club watching, knowing, and it's education and experiences, knowing that what I went through, that person's going through, seeing the man that was sitting in the back of the bar that had never been to a drag show and just enjoyed, they were just educated, meeting the trans bear, that I'm like, damn, and then they start talking to me and I get educating, talking to my friends that are trans women, they keep educating me. And it's all about education. That's what we need to do, is we keep talking about we're wanting all of them to accept us, which I agree, but we are not willing to educate them why. Now, if they want to stay ignorant, let them fucking stay ignorant. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Stay ignorant. Go believe what you got to do. You know what I mean? Go do you, boo-boo. Right. But there are a lot more out there that are willing to listen than we give credit to.
Yeah. Anthony, this has been really, really beautiful. Where can people find you? Where can they learn more about the brunch and the Bear Jamboree and all of it?
So Bear Jamboree, you can go to orlandobearpride.com. It will be the same weekend as every other weekend or every other function that happens in June. So that will be, I think, May 31st to June 3rd, I think, is that weekend of next year of 2024, orlandobearpride.com. They can, for the brunch, it is the Tavares Doghouse in Tavares, Florida. We are there usually the first Saturday of the month. We are on break until September 9th because I needed a break. So I took 2 months off, 2.5 months off. So we'll be back there September 9th. You can follow me on Instagram at Bearonce Bear. You can follow me on Facebook at Bearonce Bear, Twitter at Bearonce Bear, or TikTok at Bearonce Bear. So you can literally go to all of them. TikTok isn't my strength. I'm still learning how to, I'm like, I don't get this. I just do, I just do what I think is supposed to be on there. But yeah, so those are all the social media platforms that you can go on and you can find me. And yeah, I loved sharing my thought process and experiences with you. And I cannot thank you enough for having me on here.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me and giving me your time.
Yes.
I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jack. Absolutely.
Do you know anyone who you think would make a great guest on this podcast? The good news is there's almost no qualification. They need to be a human and they need to make art. I'm not particularly concerned if they make art for 100,000 people or for no people and they're still doing it in their home. This podcast is all about telling the stories of artists and how their craft has evolved over time, how they perform in their own unique way. So if you have a friend that you love listening to, if you have someone who you think has a really interesting story, I would so love to talk to them. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us at stagedivepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for watching Stage Dive again. My name is Jack Dawkins. It was a pleasure to have you here. Before I sign off, I do want to thank Kalisa Mickle and Holly Johnson for being the hearts, the guts, the brains behind the operations that make this entire podcast possible. They work so hard to continue to improve it and put it in front of more people and allow it to continue to live on. So thank you to them, thank you to our guest, and thank you to you for watching. I appreciate you.